couple of years ago, I decided this was the perfect spot in our backyard for a pondless waterfall with a bit of a stream. And I saw how people had used the Aquabasin and the materials that came with it to create little cascading waterfalls. And I thought, that's exactly what we need to do. So I began watching videos. And if you're like me and you really like to see the details, I probably watched close to 100 different videos showing people making streams and ponds and pondless water features and the whole bit. So if they say you can do it in an afternoon with your friends or over the weekend, I'm here to tell you the actual truth. This pond was created. We are not completely finished. I wanted you to be able to see the pond at this stage. And this is an actual DIY, the truth, for people that do not have access to a big old bobcat. There's no way in the world we could get a bobcat in our backyard at this point. So we have to use what they call basketball-sized rocks, things that a human being can actually pick up. And we did have the advantage of having a bit of an incline here, so we had a natural area to put the stream. But this is what you do if you have two people and some time and a little creativity. And I'm going to take you step by step, everything we needed and everything we did. We've not planted anything yet. We are not completely finished, as I said. And so I cannot plant anything until my husband gives me the okay and he's done with it. But in the meantime, I will show you what my thinking is about plants at the end of the video, where I'm going to plant and what I'm going to plant. First way to start is to pull together your materials. Obviously, the Aquabasin itself and the pond liner and the felt that protects it are the beginnings, and a pump, and we had to do some electrical work to get electricity out here to power the pond. And we used existing plants. I pulled a lot of ferns and hostas from this area and from around the yard to get a collection of plants to plant around it. We also have been collecting rocks. Any rock, well, for years we have just put all of our rocks in one spot. Every time we came across a rock in the yard, we put it aside and it made this huge pile of rocks. And we found larger rocks and we put those aside. And we actually did make a trip to the company around here. It's called Sisler, not Sizzler like the steak, but Sisler, S-I-S-L-E-R, in the Northern Virginia area, that sells stone by the pound. So that's where our almost all of our larger stones came from them. We made 2 trips to collect all the stones that we needed to make the water feature. We had also seen people using really interesting branches and stumps and things like that. So Ted went out into the woods and collected an assortment of stumps. He loved finding ones that were interesting shapes and had moss and things like that on them, so they would add some character to what we were doing. We figured anything we didn't use in the creation of the pond, we could kind of distribute around the yard and add some character and interest. He used this large one right here to create a retaining wall because this was steep and we removed cinder blocks and something needed to stop the hill from sliding down. So he decided to use this long piece with this interesting roots on it to create a barrier for the soil. And here is the beginnings of our hole. And of course, here is the aqua basin filling the space down here. And advice that I will give you, if you have clay soil, be sure to fill it up with water, because if it rains, you can kind of push the aqua basin up. So do that. Learn from our mistake. We had to dig the hole twice. And Ted has attached the hose. You could see in the previous one there was like a little channel for the pipe that takes it up, and there you can see at the top of the hill there next to the fence, you can see where it comes out, and he is covering that up, and it's buried in here, and that's what magically takes the water to the top of the hill. I wanted to show you what's happening here, because my husband is constructing this pond a little bit differently than other people are doing it. He is, I'd say, 2 parts engineer, 1 part artist. So he wants to see how it's going to work out. He's a very thoughtful person that way, although he does have a wonderful artistic eye. So what he has done here, which is very different, is he has created kind of our little ledge here using some cinder block, because we do get a lot of runoff from this area. This actually is a very natural slope with a lot of water, and he was really concerned the whole thing would wash away, which is a distinct possibility here in Virginia when you get 5 inches of rain in 1 week, which we did last week. So what he's done is constructed a little bridge, and the water is going to flow down on the other side and actually flow under. And of course it will get some debris in it over the years, but it'll at least create a path of least resistance for the water to flow. And he's created a spot for a pool here, another pool here, and a third pool coming off of the spillway. And you can see the spillway there with the rock on top. The stump is being used to retain that area, and I wanted you to see this before he starts putting down the fabric. Okay, Ted has laid out. First layer is a layer of felt. Second layer is the layer of the pond liner, which is very thick plastic, and then the third layer is another layer of felt. That way the pond liner is completely protected from anything that might perforate it from above or below. And we do have a bit of a curve here. I don't know if you can tell this or not, but he designed it with a fold in it, which is kind of interesting because we wanted to make a curve here. And he had it all planned out. And there's our wonderful piece of stump, another stump here. We're definitely going for the native stump, falling trees by our little spring. That's the feel that we're going to have when we're finished with this. You're probably thinking this is not real attractive at the moment. Well, you know, you start off a little ugly and you work on it, but we are getting there. So you can see here's the basin, and it's our first spillway. And you had seen before, we have a stump here holding back. This is on a natural hill, so this is holding back the dirt there. And then another one that is filling in that corner. Now this was a hard corner to fill, but we're thinking in terms of planting to fill in that spot there. And we have a spillway and 2 stones on either side. And we have already turned it on, and this does spill very nicely over this into the basin. And here is our buildup. Again, we're going to use an evergreen plant to block this, but we want to be able to have access to it and for the water to flow, and we think a plant would be the best option there. So this is our first pool, and it's been raining for the last couple of days, so we're kind of a mess here. And so we've got some large stones in here. There's our spillway falling onto another rock, and the rock on the left hand side there has, you can see some lichens, and there's some moss on there that with a little bit of splash that should come back to life and do quite nicely. And then the next pool up, the next spillway, and the little waterfall, and the top is the plastic spillway with a stump over the top of it. Now, we wanted the left side of the waterfall to be higher than the right side, because obviously there's a fence there and we want to be able to look into it easily. There is the bedroom door, and you actually can see the lower waterfall from there. And what you're seeing now, we are midway through this, and you can see all of the black pond liner and felt protectant. So it's not real attractive at the moment, but even at this early stage, turned on, it's quite interesting. Now down here, we're going to add back a couple more of the cinder blocks that were originally here, because this is such a height, we need something pretty sturdy to hold this back. And the cinder blocks are pretty good places to tuck in some vinca, some liriope. There's some moss growing inside there. And up at the top here, if you look carefully under that stump, you can see the plastic spillway. It has two stones in front of it, but when it's on, you don't see the black plastic at all. And then here is the stump that hides it quite nicely. And I will come around, show you what's going on from different sides. Obviously, we need to polish off the edges. The upper level has been done the least of all, I suppose. But, we have the gravel and more side rocks and more plants to go on this. But I think it's good to have an idea of what it looks like in the middle phases, which is where we are. Now, back here, I am standing on the pathway. Here is our pathway on the side of the house, and I'm standing roughly at the door. So obviously this is not a real attractive spot. We're thinking in terms of maybe a holly. I have some hollies in pots that could block our spillway here. And then maybe some evergreen ferns around here to obscure the artificial and make it look nice. And over here this is our electrical outlet where we plug everything in. And we've got some stones around there to obscure that a little bit. But we are at the fun part now, which is making it look interesting, because right now it just looks like a pile of dirty, muddy rocks, but we're getting there. Let me go around and just show what's happened. First of all, a lot of the videos that we've seen online, they bring heavy equipment, bobcats and things like that pick up huge stones. And there's no way in the world we could even begin to get equipment like that back in here. So this had to be done by hand. And the second thing is, you can move some of those bigger rocks if you have a whole bunch of, beefy guys. But this was just my husband and myself, and we're just regular people. We're not like super weightlifters. And so the size of the rocks, some of it called them basketball size rocks. And if they're roughly basketball size rocks, they're, some of them are a bit bigger, but 50 to 70 pounds, that's something that a human being can pick up without having to do a lot of work. And so we don't have huge rocks, and placing one huge rock and making it look good is a lot easier than having to create something. So showing you what we have done here. I think a good place to start is over here so you can see. So you can see that's, the black underneath it. And my husband is the type of person that looks at all the directions and then thinks, I think I've got a better idea. So he wanted, I've mentioned this earlier, he wanted to have the felt not only under the vinyl pond liner, he wanted to have it on top so that the rocks on top would also not poke a hole in it. So we have the liner on top. And here you can kind of see how he's done here. I think he might be going to work on this a little bit more. But here's the liner, obviously, in between. And here's a rock on the outside with dirt packed in there so that liner is very well held up. And then on the inside, he's put a number of other rocks so it looks more natural. I really do like this piece of a stump hiding our spillway, our top spillway. So that is what's going on here. Now, you can still see some black in there, but we're not finished. I want you to see it before we're finished. And then over here, you can see the black felt and pond liner. And you can also see back behind it, between the felt and the rock, there is a lot of compost. So Ted put compost in there, and then he is using moss. We had access to some moss through a forested area, and so he is bringing that in, and you can see down here a combination of rocks and moss that create that liner. And you can kind of see there's a little hole right there where you can see the black felt. The water wicks up onto the felt, so the moss is quite happy, and then back behind it are the stones and the rocks that hold it into place. And you can see coming around here. Now, he and I have been having a little difference of opinion. I think he's put in more moss than he needs, but he's like, I want to have immediate results. So he's putting in a lot of moss. We have not planted any plants yet. The only thing that's happening is some moss. Now, we've also had a little bit of a change in design here. The neighbor's yard is about 2.5 feet higher than ours, and so we've got this ancient piece of metal that is holding up the neighbor's yard so it doesn't spill down into ours. And what we're thinking in terms of is maybe bringing in some dirt and filling in this area so it doesn't create, it'll look more natural, we're thinking. So that's the way things are. Maybe put some more dirt back in here. You can see our shovel here. But that's what's going to go on this area. But we are very pleased with each of the spillways. So the one down here at the bottom, a spillway onto a spillway. So a rock with flat surface onto another one. And another thing he has done, this is our our aqua basin down here, and he did not like the way the water spilled just right at the foot of the waterfall, and the remainder of the rocks, so you have to cover this whole thing with rocks, and they were dry, and so he wanted to spread the water out more. Now you can still see it. We're not finished with the rocks here, but I wanted to show you what it looks like. And what he has done here, the vinyl that comes with is very thick and heavy, and you kind of want to protect that. So what he has done is he has taken some other plastic that he had here, and this is just a clear plastic, and he's put that over here so it spreads it out more, and the water covers more of the surface of the basin, and he just poked holes in it. It was relatively inexpensive, and so he just poked holes so it went down at the rate he wanted to kind of fill it up. And you can see it's filling up along the edges here, and it is going down through the middle of the basin and along the edges. I hope that makes sense. Now this particular rock here is covering the opening. We wanted to make it easy to open it if we needed to service the pump, and I just happened to have a maidenhair fern stuck on that. We went out of town for 4 days and I didn't want it to dry out, so I just stuck the pot inside the basin here, and so a little bit of water kept it nice and happy the whole time. But that's what's going on here now. I'm a little concerned. Leaves are starting to fall, so I know in the fall my whole yard turns into a mess, and so this will catch its share of leaves, as you can already see. So the next waterfall is this one here. That's probably the biggest rock we had, and it's over 2 feet wide, about a foot deep, and at its widest point about 8 inches tall. So that one was actually a bit of a beast. And then we put another rock at the bottom of it, and it creates a little bit of a spillway there. And then up above and coming out here, which has been really fun to create the different waterways and the spillways. And we do occasionally come out here and we check, and if we are very stealthy in our approach, we'll see the little ground squirrels and the squirrels and the birds taking advantage of the running water. So it is a fun place for the little critters. But you can see we definitely have some work to do. This area down in here is looking quite nice, but again you can see that same technique. Rocks on the outside, creating a space. Now underneath this moss, that's where the liner is. Maybe I can pick that up and show you. See, there's the liner, and there's the happy moss on top covering the liner, and he has you can see here's the compost. So that's gonna very nicely attach itself all around the pond, and then we'll come back and put more dirt here and lots of plants to finish that. So far the pond has been created without any of the foam sealant that blocks off the flow and directs the flow. But there's a spot right here where Ted would like to create a little pool. So we've turned off the flow to the waterfall, and he's going to come back in here and block off some of the areas so that it causes the water to pool. And you can see underneath the larger rock there are some smaller rocks there, but obviously water doesn't care how small the opening is, it will get through it. Thought you might enjoy seeing the pond from top to bottom, our pondless water feature from top to bottom without the water on, so you can kind of get a feel for what's going on. So here's our top, and if you look under there, it's kind of difficult to see, but that's where the spillway is, and it's so well concealed that the water just seems to be coming out of the ground. And the rocks and the moss creating the edges. And there are rocks on the inside, rocks on the outside, and moss covering the edge. Now here's where our new little puddle is going to form, and you can see the foam expands much bigger than when you apply it. It just continues to grow for a while, and it's within 5 minutes it's no longer tacky to the touch, and it takes about 30 minutes before it's ready. It can be carved at that point, and 12 to 24 hours for it to cure. So at this point it's been a couple of hours, and it could be carved out, which obviously needs to be done because it's much bigger than we need it to be. And the other thing that's kind of interesting right here is this is moss that has not fully attached, and Ted has used some old metal spikes to just kind of hold it in place until moss does not have roots, but it has little root-like structures that will attach themselves, and this will hold it in place until it has attached itself. And he selected very flat rocks to go in places that were shallow, and that's just a pile of rocks there that he's going to do something else with them. And here's a pool here covered with rocks, moss, and you can see spillway on the left and another spillway on the right that actually falls down onto the rocks and creates a little pool behind it, and will spill over the rock you see on the left there and into the larger pool here, and down into the Aquabasin that is our reservoir. Here again you can see very clearly here rocks on the outside, rocks on the inside, and where the liner and the I'm going to call it the kind of the felt that it protects the liner. It's covered with the moss, which will it will stay wet, and the moss should grow well. And Ted is carving out the extra foam, because we certainly don't want that to show. And it's all completely under the rock, which will block the water and create a seal. As I said earlier, this is the only foam in the pond. He constructed it in such a way that it flows quite naturally. Now let's see. There it is. Is it dry or is it still sticky or anyway?
The inner part is kind of sticky.
Okay.
Be careful.
Now he's going to have kind of black hands, but that's okay. The lesson to be learned is it doesn't take as much foam as you think it's going to. Okay. Okay, here's the placement of my evergreens. First of all, I have placed the Virginia here because there's my bedroom door and I want to be able to look outside and see the Virginia because he's going to be blooming in late winter. And you know, if it's cold outside, I want to be able to look out the window and see my flowering plant. Now, this is another painted fern and it will die back in the spring. It's deciduous. So I wanted something kind of splashy behind it. Over here is the tassel fern and kind of at that corner, and I've placed it so that it will droop over the stream just a little bit. And down here, these are 3 hellebores, which again will give me some flowers in the late winter, February, March, April, well into May. I'll have flowers with these. So these are nicely kind of up where we'll see them, and because hellebores tend to be drooped, they kind of face down, so I think being up a little bit higher would be interesting. I do have some more, I think there are maybe 5 more little containers with hellebores in them, and what I'll do is I will look for spots. But I wanted to have some good evergreen along here, which I think works out very nicely. And I may put another tassel fern. I have a tassel fern on the side of the yard that's not doing real well because it's too dry on the side of the house. And so maybe I'll stick one back in there. But my Christmas fern I put over here. Now this spot is probably the one that's going to make the biggest change. And this is one of the reasons to go slowly. And that is we had a change of design. These cinder blocks were added to retain this area. We took out the cinder blocks here. Took out a lot of cinder blocks. You can probably see those in some of the old photographs. But there were cinder blocks all along here. These we put back to hold this area in place. And they had some existing periwinkle, vinca, and they was just growing in it. And this is a little bit of probably honeysuckle, which I don't like, and so I'll just keep cutting it, and I don't know that I'll ever get it out of there, but there is a little bit of vinca in there. And I did save some vinca as we went along. So this area has vinca and ivy growing in it. It's isolated, so I'm not quite as worried about the ivy being invasive, but it does exist here, and we'll just let it go ahead and creep up through that area, which I know it will. We have a lot of things that natively grow here, like the little wild violets. I've just placed the muckdinia in there, and the reason I'm favoring this spot is because this spot tends to get wet, and muckdinia likes being moist. So this gives it some nice water to keep it happy. Right next to it is the maidenhair fern. This should be a spot that's relatively protected because the stems do break very easily, so we put it there so that it's not going to get bumped. And I'm setting the Japanese painted ferns here. Here are the original Japanese painted ferns, and I wanted to create kind of a good stand of it. So I'm putting these here. And again, like the maidenhair fern, we don't want them being bumped. So this should be a spot that's out of the way. Okay, now I've placed around some hostas. There are two larger hostas back there. The one in the back is going to be our tallest one, and the one in front of it in the blue container is a little bit shorter when it's grown. And then there is a small one right here, which could very well get large, in which case I'll just kind of dig it out or divide it or whatever to keep it smaller. But that gives us a lot of variation in leaves. And I've put another one down here. This one will be a little bit larger, but there is a spot here in front of the electrical outlet where I will be putting, hello Kirby, that's where I'm going to put the variegated liriope, which will stay green all year and will give us flowers this time of year. I'm just not ready to go in and dig it up and transplant it. I'll do that later, but kind of wait for it to finish blooming and then divide it and be done with it. And then over here, I have placed another hosta. And this area here, once the soil comes in, I'll plant what I need to plant. But I still have another 11 hostas in containers. I also have a green dragon, which is a kind of related to, you know, other swamp plants like pitcher plant, that type of thing. And so that will be on this side because it gives us some height, maybe towards the back. So there we have our little waterfall stream made with the Aquabasin, and we are very, very happy with it. And I encourage you to do something like this. Don't think you have to do it in a weekend or even in a couple of weeks. If you need to take your time like we did, we're not sorry at all. I mean, it would have been nice to have it finished, but having it right is more important than having it finished. Anyway, thanks for joining me, and I will put a link in the description when I have the video of the finished product, so you can see the soil brought in and all of the plants in the ground, so you can look for that. The rate we're going, probably in another 2 or 3 weeks. Anyway, thanks so much. See you next time.